Let's talk about a huge mystery, something I think we've all seen. Why do some of the most ambitious, brilliant people, the ones with these incredible, world-changing ideas, so often get stuck? I mean, they've got the vision, they've got the passion, but the idea just never, ever leaves the drawing board. What is really going on there?
I mean, think about it for yourself. You've had that flash of inspiration, right? For a new business, a book, a big life change. You were so excited you could see it all perfectly in your head. And then, nothing. The momentum just fizzles out. What is that invisible wall we all seem to hit?
Well, the first thing we have to get straight is this is not about being lazy. Not at all. This runs much, much deeper. This is about psychology. There are these invisible patterns playing out in your mind, creating resistance and roadblocks that you don't even realize are there. All right, so here's how we're going to unpack all this. First, we're going to explore what's called the dreamer's paradox. Then, we'll dive into the internal rewards and fears that keep us frozen. After that, we'll expose the illusion of action. And finally, we'll figure out how we can go from intention to action. So that brings us to our first section, the dreamer's paradox. And it's a real catch-22. The bigger and more amazing the dream is, well, the more satisfying it is to just think about. And that feeling of satisfaction, it can actually become an anchor, stopping the real, messy, difficult work from ever getting started. The dream itself becomes the enemy of the action. So what's actually driving that paradox? Well, it boils down to a really powerful mix of internal rewards and fears. These are the invisible forces happening inside your head, creating that massive gap between what you want to do and what you actually do. Let's break down the three biggest ones. Okay, so the first trap, it's a sneaky one. See, our brains aren't always great at telling the difference between a vivid fantasy and reality. So when you imagine success, you picture yourself getting the applause, launching the product, your brain releases a little hit of dopamine. It gives you a taste of the reward without you having to do any of the work. It just feels good to think about winning. And this creates a huge internal conflict. Imagining success gives you instant gratification. It's easy, it's safe, it feels great right now. But real progress, that takes effort. It involves risk, and the gratification is way, way down the road. So when your brain is faced with that choice, it's pretty much hardwired to take the easy way out, which kills your motivation to do the actual hard stuff. Oh, this next one is a classic, the myth of the perfect start. We tell ourselves, I'll start when I have more time, or when I have more money, or when the planets align just right. But really, this hunt for the perfect conditions is just a fancy way of hiding from the fear of a messy, imperfect start. And this is where it gets dangerous, because it creates a cycle. Perfectionism isn't about having high standards. It's a very clever form of procrastination. Waiting becomes the habit, and that habit gets stronger than the original dream. You end up becoming an expert at waiting around, not at actually starting. All right, now for a really subtle one. We talk all the time about the fear of failure, right? But what about the fear of success? Think about it. Success brings huge changes, more responsibility, bigger expectations. Everyone's watching you. And even though that's a good thing, that kind of transformation can be terrifying. So without even realizing it, our subconscious might be hitting the brakes just to keep things comfortable and predictable. And those internal fears, they lead us straight into our third section, the illusion of action. This is where we get really good at tricking ourselves. It's when being busy is just a form of standing perfectly still. The most common version of this illusion is when we mix up preparing with doing. We get involved in all these activities that feel incredibly productive, but they aren't the actual work. For instance, you make these super detailed plans. You build elaborate spreadsheets. You research competitors for weeks. It feels like you're making real headway. And it's the same with talking about it. You tell all your friends, you brainstorm for hours, you get feedback. All of that generates excitement and feels like you're moving forward. But here's the hard truth. None of that is the same as actually building the thing, writing the code, or making the art. It's the illusion of movement. It keeps you busy while the real work sits there completely untouched. And all of this points to the deepest, most powerful illusion of them all, the belief that by not trying, we're actually protecting something precious. See, as long as your idea stays safe in your head, it's perfect. It's flawless potential. But the second you start to build it in the real world, you introduce the risk of failure, the risk of finding out it wasn't as great as you imagined. Psychology actually has a name for this. It's called self-handicapping. It's when we subconsciously hold back our full effort so we have a built-in excuse if we fail. That way, if it doesn't work out, we get to say, oh, well, I didn't really try. It's a defense mechanism, a way to shield our ego from the actual test.
It all comes down to this powerful and kind of sad idea. If you never try, you never disprove the dream. By staying on the sidelines, you get to keep the identity of the person who could have been a huge success. That potential stays safe, untested, and perfect. The dream can never fail if it never leaves your mind.
Okay, so we've seen the internal fears, we've seen the illusions of action. That brings us to our final and most important section. How do we actually move from just intending to do something to doing it? This is about closing what might be the single biggest gap in all of human life. So let's do a quick recap. We've seen how we get trapped by getting rewarded for just imagining success, by waiting for the perfect moment that never comes, and by subconsciously fearing what success will bring. We've seen how we trick ourselves by confusing planning with doing, and how we self-handicap to protect our own potential. These are the 5 big traps that keep our best ideas on lockdown. And when you put all that together, you arrive at the core truth of this whole thing. The difference between the people who build their dreams and the people who don't, it's not always the quality of the idea. It's their ability to cross that huge, terrifying gap between intending to do something and actually doing it. So I'll leave you with this final thought. When it comes to your own big idea, that grand ambition you have, the most important question isn't how great is it? The real question is, are you using these patterns to keep it safe inside your head, or are you out in the world taking the risk and actually trying to build it?